Good day. My name is Mitchell, and I am a private pilot with my instrument written exam complete. I have 70.5 total hours of flight time. 24 days ago, I started studying for my instrument written exam, and I just got home from the written test with a 93%. Pretty happy with that, considering for the last 24 days I've been working 2 jobs. That's more than 60 hours a week at work, and the study workload in order to be prepared for this test was, I would say, at least 12 hours per week on top of that. So the last 24 days have been exhausting. I am relieved and stoked to have this 93% and have this written exam behind me. Compared to my private pilot written exam, which I did about 9 months ago, I only scored a 71% on that written exam. For the private pilot, I used Sporty's ground school. That was $25 for a 1-month subscription. I completed the entire private pilot video content, which was about 40 hours. I got that done in less than a month. I took maybe 5 or 6 practice tests on the Sporty's platform and felt like I was scoring good enough on those practice tests that I could schedule the exam. Went to the exam, just barely got by with a 71%. I told my flight instructor, and he said, hey, no big deal, man. Moving forward, we got that done and we can move on to the next step. And while that is true, every question you get wrong on your written exam is going to go onto a list that will be handed to your designated pilot examiner when you take your oral exam. That means I think I got 18 questions wrong on this 60 question test. Just barely passing with that 71%. That means my DPE, my designated pilot examiner, he's quizzing me on the 18 things I got wrong, perhaps thinking to himself, wow, this guy doesn't really know his stuff. And so some theorize that maybe a lower written test score makes for a more challenging private pilot oral exam. I don't know. The case for me was a very difficult and taxing oral exam. It was very lengthy, very thorough, and I was sweating the whole time. So with that being said, I am much happier moving forward after my written exam for the instrument rating to have a 93%. Maybe that'll give me a little more confidence moving forward. So Sporty's, I ended up spending $25. I canceled that monthly subscription right after completing my practice test and going to that written exam. So I only spent $25 that time. That was the only ground school that I had for the PPL. This time around, going into my instrument rating, I have had 0 ground school up to this point. I have not paid for a ground school or participated in a ground school. I've received no ground school instruction from an instructor or anything. So I just bought the Sheppard program, which is $50, and started diving into that program. The Sheppard program is not a ground school. It is literally just a bank of test questions. 1,004 questions is how many were in the bank while I went through the program. So I went through those 1,004 questions maybe 5 times by the time the program was over. Any questions I didn't know at the end of it, I marked, reviewed those extra times. So going through Sheppard Air without any prior ground school knowledge was challenging. it was, it was very challenging. I didn't know what an initial approach fix was. I didn't know what decision altitude was, minimum obstacle clearance altitudes, anything that had to do with instrument flying. I really had no idea. There was some of that private pilot knowledge that translated into this instrument written test. I would say less than 30% was knowledge carried over from the private. 70% of that content was completely new. And I was going through this test bank without any idea what this stuff meant. The study process during this time was very intense. My day job is 5 days a week. I work 5 a.m. to 1 p.m. During my workday, I do have some downtime. So during that downtime, I've got my iPad with me. I can pick that up. I might get about 60 minutes of screen time on my iPad while I'm at work. In my iPad, that's where Sheppard Air is installed. So I can do maybe 60 or 90 minutes while I'm at work, and that includes any lunch breaks or 15-minute breaks or whatever. So maybe 1 hour at work. I get home. By the time I get home, I have 2 hours before I need to leave for my evening job, which is serving tables at a restaurant. So that 2 hour break in the middle, I'm probably going to spend an hour dealing with food and showering and changing, and then I'll have an hour to get to as many questions as I can. After my lunch break, I go to my evening job, and by the time I get home, it's about 10:30 p.m. I am thoroughly exhausted, probably as exhausted as I've ever been with any of my moments in different lifestyles. And so I can't really do any questions at 10:30 when I get home. Maybe I'll run through a dozen questions. I would literally, if I had time to do 5 or 10 questions, I would pick up the iPad and just to get a couple done, because it was an immense workload. At least that's how it felt for the first couple weeks. I really didn't think there was any way I was going to get through it. So I was looking for any spare minute where I could get through a couple questions. So go to sleep, hopefully by 10:30, maybe 11 p.m. The alarm goes off at 3:45 a.m. Because while my morning job starts at 5 a.m., but I really have to clock in by 4:30. 5 a.m. is when my first job task needs to be completed, and that's the way it goes, you know. Maybe 5.5 hours of sleep, and right back at it. Do a few days like that in a row, and I'm starting to get pretty frustrated, pretty burnt out. And that was not very sustainable. Luckily that only lasted for, a few weeks, and I was able to pull it off just enough. So proud of myself, reached my goal, but definitely not something I want to recreate in the future. I would rather structure things in a different way to avoid that kind of schedule. Not sure if I would recommend it or not. It was very frustrating. It took a lot of time. I had to do a lot of Googling to try to fill in the gaps and to give me some context in this situation. And so that was a pretty big challenge. But the bottom line is 24 days later and $50 invested, I have my instrument written exam done. That's one checkbox completed. Now I have to do my instrument oral and my instrument practical to earn my instrument rating. So one step down, 2 to go. With where I'm at right now, I still might might be purchasing a full ground school, even though I'm not preparing for the written exam any longer. I still might go through a full ground school before I dive into practical lessons. I have not had any practical lessons yet. That'll come a little ways down the road. I've got to get some things in order first. The reason why I ended up going with Sheppard Air immediately prior to doing any ground school is because I have a friend coming to town next week. He needs a safety pilot, and so I might be busy jumping into some other things, flying with him and getting into some practical stuff. I was really hoping to have the written exam completed before he arrives. I looked into it. I tried to come up with a timeline, aiming for 3 weeks to study and get that written exam done. 24 days, came pretty close to that goal and was able to achieve it. Was it the smartest way to go about your aviation education? Well, maybe that remains to be seen moving forward. But if the goal was to get my instrument written done by this week, August 15th, I have accomplished that. So pretty excited about that. I am relieved and excited to relax, step away from the books for a little bit and unwind, get some downtime moving forward. The next 6 weeks, I will continue to work 2 jobs. Going to be working a lot, going to be busy, trying to build my credit as much as possible, get my credit score into a place where I can apply for a loan to pay for the next phase of training. Up to this point, I don't have any loans, and that feels good, but I think the next phase of training, I do need to get a financial lump sum to accelerate this training process. So that's where I'm at now, and very excited to get going. I'll be doing some more flying in the next 6 weeks while working, and that's just to kind of stay current, keep the dust off, and get ready for that next phase of training that's coming up. So looking forward to that. Stay tuned. Thanks for watching.